Yo, guys, what's going on? Welcome to the pilot episode of this hip hop themed podcast we like to call Shifting the Culture. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, Conscious Kurt in the flesh as always, and my co-host is my brother and fellow hip hop head, Khan. Khan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Finally, glad that we finally started this podcast. It's been a long time in the work, so I'm glad we could finally put our minds together and get this up and running.
Yes, and here on Shifting the Culture, we like to talk about different things concerning hip hop, whether it's old school, new school, or anything in between, what we love about the culture, what we don't like about the culture, what we would like to see change, and any other news that we can break you off going forward. Okay, so Khan, I wanted to ask you, what are your very first memories of hip hop? Like your very first memories of, let's say, a music video, a tape you bought, anything along those lines?
When I first got into hip hop, I would say that the first song that really stood out to me would be MC Hammer's "Can't Touch This." The song was probably the biggest hip hop song at that time, probably of all time. Up until maybe like the 2000s, something like that. But that song shifted the culture, and that was a pretty big song, and brought hip hop to another level as far as popularity. And from there, I started hearing songs here and there. But another song that really stood out to me was "Jump" by Crisscross. They're just their style, the way that they wore their clothes, where they're wearing backwards. They had the iconic song "Jump," which was the great video that was produced and wrote by Jermaine Dupri, who's been in the game for God knows for a very long time. So that was another song that really stood out to me. As I got more into hip hop, I would say Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg "Ain't Nothing But a G Thing." I remember seeing that video on MTV, playing all day long, and that was one of the most iconic videos at that time. So that was another video that kind of stood out to me, and one thing that I remember a lot. How about you? Some of your first memories of getting into hip hop or learning about it.
To be honest, I was gonna say exactly what you said. MC Hammer's "Can't Touch This" was like one of the first like real hip hop songs like I can remember, like from when I would say about 4 to 5 years old. Yeah, that song was huge.
Yeah, but how could you remember that? You're like 4 or 5 years old. I was about to
I
say.
still recall. I mean, I still recall that kind of like early '90s period. I remember that song specifically and the video. I remember how popular Hammer was with the Saturday morning cartoon. He was also like in Taco Bell commercials, from what I remember.
Yeah, I remember that.
So yeah, you can't touch us. I remember very well. You
Yeah, I would say he would be the Michael Jordan of hip hop at that time, or I don't know. I would say hip or popular hip hop, I guess, because it wasn't really like hardcore lyrics at that time until like his later albums, like Pumps in a Bump and all that stuff, when he was trying to be gangster. But as far as when he first came out, that was one of like the biggest like commercial hits that people know about, and people remember. Another one that actually that I remembered also was Will Smith and DJ Jazzy Jeff with "Summertime." That was a pretty big hit, and
oh,
it was a more
oh hell yeah.
laid black hit. But that song definitely was played a lot during that time. It was in movies. It was at all the cookouts and barbecues over the summertime. So I remember that was another major hit as well.
Yeah, and that was also like when Fresh Prince first started. They even would make references to it like on the show. Yeah, I kind of remember Will and Jazzy Jeff, but I will say that MC Hammer was like the first one that really stood out to me, where I was like, that was like my first like real introduction to hip hop. Like I had never heard of it before up until then, but then from that point on, I would never forget it. I know Hammer wasn't the nicest MC per se, and he didn't have the best lyrics, but he could dance, he could perform, and he had that star power. And sometimes that shit means just as much, if not more.
Yeah, he was very popular, and like I said earlier, he definitely took hip hop to another level and definitely shifted the culture. So there was a couple other ones that I wanted to call out that were very popular around that time. I would say around 91, 92. I would say a conscious group that's actually from Atlanta, where we're from now. I was gonna say Arrested Development with Tennessee. That was a pretty big track. That group was very conscious, and they had a lot of positive messages in their music. So that was another song that really stood out to me back in that times. Also, Ice Cube's "Today Was a Good Day." That video and that beat, that story that he told about his day, living a life in LA and just going through that whole day to day process with him on the West Coast. That was dope. And then also Das Effects with their style and their flow. Those another one. You Want Effects was definitely a big time song that had a lot big impact on me and how I got into hip hop and wanted to listen to more.
Another one like during that early '90s period that also stuck out to me was OPP from Naughty by Nature.
Oh yeah, that's another one I forgot. That yeah,
Ooh,
definitely. That was another
ooh.
song around that time that propelled hip hop, and that song was gone. That was song was playing for at least a year. Was on like the video was playing. It was on the radios. So that song, you got to give credit to Naughty by Nature. There was a pretty big group that was definitely underrated. People don't talk about them enough, but back in that time, Tretch was like pretty much one of the hottest artists at that time.
Yeah, he was supposed to be in Juice also. He only Tupac just went with him to the audition for Juice, and then Tupac ended up getting it because he like randomly auditioned, and they were so impressed by him that Tupac got it instead. Crazy how things turn out.
Yeah, Tretch was that dude back then, yo. He was gangster. He was cool. He even had the R and B chick, the girl that was in what Salt and Pepper. That was his chick. Remember
Oh yeah, I
back in
think I
the day,
remember.
he was in movies. So Tresh was on top of the world back then.
Another fun track I remember from that period, that early '90s period, was that "I Got a Man" track from Positive K.
Oh yeah, definitely that song, man. Like just him going back and forth with the female that and that video was just crazy. That was definitely a good time. That was like a feel good track. That was kind of funny. It had a storyline, great video to go with it, and it was just a great song. The one that stuck out. Also, another one. This one, this probably grew. I would say years later, but it was definitely very popular. Biz Markie, you say you just a friend. That was another big track.
Yeah, that was a little before. That was like the end of the '80s.
Yeah, the end of the '80s. But I remember that song. Around that time when "I Got a Man" was popping. That song was pretty popular. Wasn't Biz Markie in the video? If I remember correctly, I might have to go back and check that out.
He
But I
might
think
have been. He might. I
might
gotta
have
watch
been.
that video again.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but that song definitely stood out. That was a very big song back then.
Yeah, and also one more. Yeah, also in addition to that, jump song from Crisscross. Another one that was really crazy during that period was Rakim and Eric B's "Don't Sweat the Technique."
Oh yeah, definitely. They definitely did their thing with the rapping and producing. So it's definitely a classic group.
Also, "Know the Ledge" from Juice, the song they played at the beginning of the movie. That song's mad
Oh
fire.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that soundtrack. That's another thing. Back then, the soundtracks to movies were like ridiculous. They were better than some people's albums. Like that's how I miss those days when the soundtracks used to be, really good. They have pretty much all the hot artists on there, and you can hear the songs within the movie. So I miss those days when the soundtracks used to be really good back then.
Hell, most of those soundtracks a lot of the times were better than the actual movie itself.
Yeah, definitely. Or a lot of times the soundtrack made the movie. Like the soundtrack was so good that it made the movie stand out.
It made you want to see the movie.
Yeah, definitely. So I was gonna ask you, what is something that you missed from that era of music that's not around today? Because now things we're streaming music now. We're not like buying CDs or tapes anymore. So times have changed and the culture has shifted. So what are some of the things that you kind of missed from back in that time frame when music was when we were first getting into hip hop in that era, the early '90s era?
Music videos, plain and simple. Music videos.
Oh yeah, I
I know
agree.
they're still around now, but it's just not the same. It feels like there's a lot of good music out there still, but the fact they don't really play music videos as much anymore, it's like a lot harder for me to find. And that aspect of it, I really miss a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't. It's not too hard to find music videos. You can go on YouTube and pretty much find any video. But I do understand though it is not as easy to find a good hip hop music. It's not like right there in front of your face and easy to find. You kind of have to dig for it. So I do get understand that part of it.
Yeah, and also during that era, it kind of felt like everybody was different and everybody had their own sound and was like everybody was like more original in a sense. And now, although there are original people, it just feels like, especially with female rap, everybody tries to sound the same.
Yeah, you're right. There's no creativity, no originality like there was back in that time. And also, you had to be nice back then. In the '90s, you couldn't just come out and just come out with
Exactly.
some gimmicky song or some Mickey Mouse ABC 1 2 3 song. Like you actually had to have some bars and some lyrics, or like you had to have a message with your music. Like you can't just come out with some any kind of song back then and expect your song to hit. Like you had to have some substance. So it was definitely a different era. One thing I don't wanted to mention that I do miss a lot from that era is actually physically purchasing like the actual tapes or CDs. That was one thing when I remember going to the stores like the Wiz. What's another one? The Radio Shack, the Best Buy. Back in those times, those were like kind of like the places where you go. Specs, like those
And
kind of
Sam
places.
Goody too.
Sam Goody, those places where you go and buy your music. But I miss going and buying the CD or the tape, bringing it home, and reviewing the credits. Like it was cool to check to see, who they
Mhm.
sampled, who wrote the song. Also, another thing what was cool, one thing that Nas did, which stood out to me was, and it was written. I don't know if you remember, in the It Was Written, he had the actual lyrics to every song, and not a lot of albums did that where they had the artwork in there, and then had the credits, who they sampled from, all that good stuff, the shout outs and thank yous, and then they had the lyrics to every song, which would made you like really like get into the song, because sometimes people are rapping so fast or you just don't catch what the hell they're saying, or they may say it in a different way. And then when you get the lyrics and you can actually follow along with them, it's just like it just brought you to another level and made you respect that artist, like, from on a different level. So I definitely respected Nas and other artists around that time. I'm trying to think of anybody else who did that. I mean, I want to say,
Actually, like going back to that, like with like the lyrics, you can actually being able to read them from the album booklet. It was mainly with R&B albums I would notice would have that. Like it would be rare for a hip hop album to have that.
yeah,
Very
Nas,
rare.
It Was Written was the one that stood out to me that I remember that definitely had that. I just can't think of anyone's off the top of my head, but yeah, you are right. There's a lot of R&B albums that definitely had their lyrics within the credits. So that was definitely dope. I also missed like I always had I had that sport Walkman. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was that bright yellow Walkman that it was pretty a staple in the hip hop. Everybody who had listened to music back then and on the go definitely had that yellow sports Walkman, and that was definitely what I had first. I was playing my music through there. So when I first started listening to hip hop, so I definitely missed that. That's something I missed as well.
Yeah, I get it with the whole anticipation of buying the album. Like it would say the album's in stores October 10th, and you would like be eagerly waiting for October 10th for that CD to drop. And then after school or whatever, or over the weekend, you'd be right at whatever store it may be, and you'd be copping that shit. And then you'd be just listening to it over and over again. You listen to it for a week straight, sometimes a month straight. And yeah, like it's cool to have the streaming services we have now, like Spotify when it comes up there right away and all that, but it's just not the same. I will admit. Even with going to the movies, it kind of reminds me of what movies have become now, like with all the streaming services and stuff, where like the movies come on the streaming service as opposed to the movie theater. It's kind of the same thing with music. And while it's more convenient and all that, which is great, it's just like a different vibe, and it's just like not really the same, I guess, energy and feel that we would get from back then. And that's something I will say I do miss.
Yeah, I definitely feel you. I feel like the anticipation has gone. That's something that was different back then. Like albums didn't come out, like you artists wouldn't come out every year. They would drop an album and it would come out maybe 2 or 3 years later. That would give them time to kind of like, live life and come up with different things and evolve as an artist, and just have new topics and things to rap about and talk about. I just feel like right now, like music gets watered down because it's more about the quantity instead of the quality. Right now it's all about how many albums can I drop, what artists can I have on my album so I can get my streams up. It's not even about artists getting in the studio together, working together as a team, coming up with an ill song. It's just like, yo, let me just get whoever's hot right now and getting a bunch of streams. Let me just record a verse, send it to them, have them record a verse, and we'll slap it together and throw it out. That's why you can tell like the quality of music has gone down, because people are not respecting the art. It's more about the quantity and selling, selling records and making money. It's not about the art anymore. So I feel like we definitely need to shift back to get more about the art instead of just about streams and money.
Yeah, because I remember with Nas, he would come out with an album like what, every 2 years, every 3 years. And I would say the only exception back then was Jay-Z. Like Jay-Z was like the only one who was dropping albums like every single year. Like from
Right.
1996 to 2003, Jay-Z always had an album out. And while it was good that, he stayed relevant and stayed in the public eye and all that, realistically, not all of those albums were good. Hell, at least half of them weren't good now that I
Right.
think about it.
Right. It's hard to to drop a classic album year after year. Yeah, some are gonna hit and some are not gonna. They're gonna totally miss the mark when you do it like that. So I would say artists, take your time, really craft and lock in on your art, and just try to come out with the best material that you can put out instead of just putting out anything just to put something out.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of like movie franchises when they come out with a sequel like the next year, and and the sequel ends up sucking, and then they come out with a sequel the year after, and that one ends up sucking even more. As opposed to
Yeah, they
taking your
just kill it.
time and coming up with a good story and actually, making it something that people will actually want to see and actually want to, speak highly of. They just have to rush it because it's all about the money and all about the, I guess, keeping the brand relevant.
I got you. So since we're talking about dropping, every year, let's talk about Drake. Since Drake is an artist who's probably the biggest rap artist in the last 15, 20 years that's came out. He's constantly releasing albums. He's on the biggest singles that come out on the radio, and that people just know. And he just recently dropped For All the Dogs. The album just came out on October 6th, Friday, October 6th. So what do you think about Drake's new album? Do you think that he should take a break? Is he dropping too much music, or what? What do you feel about the new album after you're listening, checking it out?
I'll be honest, Drake's dope. I have no issue with Drake, but my thing with him is I've never really been big on his albums. Like the only two albums of his I could say I actually liked were So Far Gone, which is more of a mixtape than an album, and Take Care. But besides that, like if you ask me to listen to like a Drake album from start to finish, I'm like, bro, do I have to? Like it feels like a chore to listen to a Drake album.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I would say, yeah, definitely. I would say Take Care. Would probably my favorite. That's the one with him sitting with the owl on the front.
That's with Love and the Crew. That's with the song with Rihanna. That's with Underground Kings. Underground Kings was also on there too.
Yeah, those are the bangers on that album. That was I would have to say that would be my favorite Drake album. And So Far Gone, like you said, it was a mixtape, but that was most likely one of my favorite Drake projects that he ever dropped. Also, Nothing Was the Same was a pretty good one too. It had some tracks on there that I was feeling, but I just feel like Drake is definitely a good artist. He's going to be going down as in history as one of the greatest, biggest artists of all time. I just feel like just everybody has a run, man. Everybody has a few years where they're hot. Drake is an exception. He's made it this far. He's over 10 years in the game, and he's still dropping consistent music, and he's still dropping good music. I just feel like with this album, you could tell like he's kind of like burnt out. Like he needs a break. He needs to recharge his batteries. He needs to live life a little bit and come back with some new material. I just feel like it kind of got stale with his music. Like the songs kind of sound the same as like I'm not really hearing anything new from Drake. I'm kind of hearing stuff that he's already done. So I would like him, to be a fan of Drake. I would like to see him evolve and to try different things, partner up with different artists. Feels like he's always doing a song with 21 Savage and all the same people. I just feel like it's time for him to, maybe step back a little bit, take a break. He's a multimillionaire. He's got his son now. I'm sure he's making mad money. He's at the top of the, the totem pole or whatever, as far as this generation, along with J. Cole and Kendrick. But I just feel like it's time for him to chill, fall back, let these other kids take it for a minute, and just come back with a banging album. I just feel like just time that he just been dropping too much. He just needs to take a break and just work on putting out some quality material.
Yeah, honestly, I've been saying Drake needs to take a break since like 2011. I was saying that shit even back then because he was just one of those dudes who just never disappeared. Like every year he would either be having an album out, he'd be featured on something. Yeah, like it just feels like this dude has been around nonstop since 2009. And I give him credit for having that longevity and, being able to cut that kind of pace. But at the same time, music quality wise, I've just kind of fallen out of him, and I've been falling out of him since like probably I would say 2013, 14. Yeah, because I feel like, especially from listening to his newest album, I feel like his music doesn't really cater to us, and like mostly doesn't really cater to men in general. I feel like his music now more caters to women, kind of like what Ja Rule eventually became, and also LL Cool J. That's kind of the lane I feel like Drake is in at this point.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of stuck. He's kind of put himself in a box where he has to do the singing more than the rapping. Where it's like I don't know. I feel like people kind of expected a different type of album, and this is kind of like more of like what Drake is known for. He's really known ever since he came out for singing and rapping, but now it's just more like it's more singing, and it's like there's not as much depth to his music like there used to be. I just feel like his songs are not hitting like they used to. Like that song that he came out with, "Search and Rescue," a few months ago, it didn't really blow up like I thought it would. He just came out with that song "Slime You Out" with SZA, which SZA is probably like the biggest R&B artist right now. And that song I thought would have did better than what it has, even though it did hit number one on the Billboard charts. I felt like I don't know. I just felt like it didn't really hit like some of his other songs that he's had in the past. And I just felt like on this album, J. Cole had the best verse on the whole album, and it's not even his album. So it's kind of like remember when Eminem had that Renegade when he went in on Jay Z when everybody said that Eminem had the better verse. I kind of feel like J. Cole had the clearly the best verse on the whole entire album, and it's like kind of overshadowed it in a way. Just like just J. Cole just on another level right now, and I just feel like I don't know if Drake was gonna go head to head with J. Cole, he needed to come harder than that because like people what I'm just looking on the online at the comments and everybody's talking about how ill J. Cole's verse is compared to Drake's album.
Yeah, that's my thing also. Like when it comes to albums, I'd be much more hyped to listen to like a J. Cole album, a Kendrick album, or a Joey Badass album as opposed to a Drake album. I kind of have the same issue with Drake album wise that I did with Wiz Khalifa, where I could listen to a few songs here and there and they'll be dope and all that, but after a few tracks, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to listen to something else. Like I'll never forget
Yeah, I feel you.
when I drove from Vegas to LA a couple years ago. I like listened to the new Drake album that was out at the time. This was like 2018. It was like a double album or whatever, and from start to finish, I listened to that album for pretty much half the trip. And bro, that shit dragged. That shit dragged. I'm not saying it was bad.
Yeah, I feel
I'm
you.
not saying it was bad, but yo, it just felt like it went on forever.
Yeah, so with Drake, I would say more. I would say, as far as I know, people I talk to, I would say more. He's more catering to the females than to the males right now. Everybody's still asking for that hip hop album where he's just rapping, for the whole album. Nobody wants to hear the singing. People just want like a mixtape Drake album. That's what they want. So hopefully we'll see what happens if he takes his hiatus. For he said he's gonna take a year off at least to focus on his health. So I think it's a good time for him to step away. He's dropped enough music where he could just chill out for a little while. I feel like he shouldn't jump on anybody's features for a little while. Just kind of lay low for a little bit and just come out of nowhere with a banging album that's just dope. Just hopefully he evolves and switches some things up a little bit. But I would like for him to just take a break and just come back with some fresh energy and just try to keep killing it like he has been over the years.
Yeah, I think especially he needs to take a break now, considering the fact that he's like, picking fights with Charlamagne and picking fights with Joe Budden now because they criticized his album and he like went off on them on Instagram and all this other jazz. Yeah, considering all that, maybe it is time for him to chill out.
Yeah, I noticed that he's getting into these petty arguments. Like on this album, he went ahead and dissed Rihanna, ASAP Rocky, and also NBA YoungBoy. So I feel like
Ah,
he's getting annoyed. So I just feel like he just needs to take a break and just focus on getting his health right, spend some time with his son, enjoy the fruits of his labor because he's killing it. He has a lot of money. He's very successful. So enjoy your life, man, and just come back. Live your life a little bit and come back with a banging album in a couple of years. Take a break. It's not saying he's retiring, but just take a little break.
yeah, it's great to hustle. It's great to work hard and make your mark, but sometimes you just need to chill out. Like life does not always have to be about work 24/7. It does not have to be that way, especially in his case when he can just relax and just chill. Yo, take advantage of that shit. A lot of people would kill for that opportunity.
Yes. All right. So transitioning from an artist that drops pretty consistently every year to an artist that doesn't drop too often. We had Diddy drop his new Off the Grid album, which I can't remember the last time he dropped his the Dirty Money album. When was it? Like 2013, 2014, something like
I
that.
think it was 2010.
When he dropped his last
I think it
album,
was 2010 if I remember correctly. 2010.
2010. Wow,
I was
wow.
still living in New York at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a while ago, but that album has some bangers on there too. But from what I was gonna say, talk about this album, the Off the Grid, the Love, Diddy Love album. This is definitely a breath of fresh air. It's something that I don't know. People didn't expect this type of album. People thought that Diddy was gonna come on here and rapping, but It's not that type of album. Once you give it a listen, then you'll understand and hopefully appreciate Diddy as the musician and the producer that he is. I know people knock him saying that what does he actually do in the studio? Does he just, yell at people in the studio and tell them that they're trash and send them to go get cheesecake? No, that's not what he actually does. But he's good at helping put curate music and knows how to put music together, and he knows what sounds good and what doesn't sound good, which you can't deny his talent for that. His eye, his ear for music, you can't deny him for that. And I feel like this album was a very well put together album. You could tell that he took some years to put it together, and it was a really deep and heartfelt album. You can feel like the meaning behind all these songs. Like it was just dope on another level. I want to hear what some of your thoughts about the Diddy Off the Grid album. What you thought about it?
I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I would say I enjoyed more the second half of it than the first half, but overall, it was a good project. I could definitely tell a lot of work and a lot of effort went into it, and I'm looking forward to listening to it again. It's definitely kind of a sound that we're more familiar with and we do know, and that's I can't really say is something new, but it was nice to get that kind of reminder of it because we haven't had it in a while. So in that regard, I did fuck with it. It was dope. I would say I would compare Diddy to kind of like Phil Jackson, where like he kind of brings out the best in artists and like knows like what works for them and what doesn't work for them and how they need to be coached in a sense. So that's kind of the comparison I would make with Diddy as far as that goes. And to be honest, a lot
Okay.
of us became hip hop fans and music fans in general because of Diddy and the artists he put out, whether it was Biggie, 112, Faith, Mace. He was a big reason why a lot of us became fans during that era.
Yeah, definitely. Just the way that he marketed his artists, just the music videos, just the style and just the vibe that all of his artists had. It was just on another level. And I just feel like this album is something that we've been missing. I feel like R&B music has kind of taken a left turn over the last few years. I feel like a lot of R&B artists are more trying to rap nowadays, and rappers are trying to sing. When
Same.
when it kind of like cross the lines, it kind of fuck things up. Well, they're trying to do thug chants and whatever on to do that thug love type of stuff, singing on their songs. But leave that to the R&B artists. Let them sing the choruses and whatnot. We don't need hip hop artists to be doing that. That's what we have R&B singers for. So I feel like this album kind of got back to that '90s vibe, that loving your girl and vibing with your girl, having a good time, and just that kind of feeling. Like I just feel like we've lost that over the years. Just I don't know, things have been different in music, and I feel like this album was kind of like a nostalgic album that kind of brought me back to that '90s era of R&B, and made me like go back and listen to some of those classic R&B joints that I haven't listened to in a while, like that '90s the R&B, man. Like there's no other feeling in that '90s R&B, man. That's like one of my the best genres. That time period in general, just like one of the best times for music, just in hip hop, R&B, and like a lot of genres like that. Just another type of energy that was going on during the '90s, and I'm glad that Diddy put this album together and he brought it back to what people were missing, and hopefully this inspires some, because there are some good R&B artists that are out there that just don't get the recognition on the mainstream. They don't play them on the radio like that, who kind of have this vibe. So hopefully more artists in the mainstream get back to this kind of vibe, and let's hear some great R&B music come from this. Hopefully, it inspires some great music to come from it.
Yeah, I'll be honest. R&B in general, as although I still love it and there's still some good ass music out there, it hasn't been the same for me since I would say like the mid 2000s. Like I would say like yeah, like 2004, 2005. Like after that period, it kind of like really started to go down. Where like like very few R&B artists like were really selling or like really getting mainstream attention. But yeah, like something like this album from Diddy and also like artists like SZA and also her and all that kind of jazz. It's kind of like nice to kind of like get that spark again in a sense, get that spark. And also, it's funny that you mentioned how like R&B isn't the same anymore. I feel like because of that, a lot of relationships don't last as long anymore, and a lot of divorce rates are higher now because we don't have that kind of music to show us, what true love really is, and that kind of like encouragement of what true love really is. Now we have the toxic bullshit.
Yeah, I feel like society has gone to a toxic state over the last few years, and hopefully this will get us back to love again, and just being having some good R&B music to appreciate your woman, man. Like just some good feel good music that you can vibe with your girl. I know sometimes you want to hear that ignorant shit. You want to, hear that club shit. That hardcore shit. I get that. I have different phases like that. But sometimes you want to just vibe with your lady, and you can't just do that all the time. There's not that type of music that makes you that's good. That makes you want to vibe with your girl. It might cater to your woman, but this type of album can cater to to your woman and to yourself as well. So that's why I felt like it was a great album, and we'll see how it does. See what people think about it.
Yeah, that kind of album, you and your girl won't have to leave the crib for the whole weekend. Yeah, I would like to see more R&B like to that level coming out going forward. Definitely, and definitely see more of it get the exposure that it deserves, and bring back the damn music videos too.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon. Yeah, he's got to go on YouTube if you want to watch those videos.
Actually, believe it or not, MTV actually plays videos 1 day a week now.
Oh wow, I don't even know that. I didn't even know MTV still existed.
MTV still exists, of course it does. It still exists. I mean, it's not. It's definitely a shell of itself, but it still exists. BET still exists.
What the fuck do they play on MTV nowadays?
Um, I mean, well, for one, I told you they play
Jersey
music
Shore.
video. Yeah, that like like reality TV shit and like old movies and old like sitcoms and whatnot.
Wow, it's a shame how bad both of those networks got over the years. Like they don't even play music anymore.
Well, like I said, MTV does play music videos like every Saturday morning now. I mean, it's only 1 day out of the week, but still, it's better than nothing. And they have that channel MTV Classic, which is nice, but that's more for older stuff.
Yeah, I feel you. But there's not like a show that comes on like every week that plays like the hottest new music videos. Like I remember watching rap, getting home from school and watching Rap City for like the latest and greatest in hip hop that came out. We had the
Oh,
freestyles.
actually, it's funny that you brought up Rap City. Speaking of which, the Rap City documentary drops on BET this month.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. I know Big Ticket was working on that. Shouts out to them. That definitely, yeah. Every day coming home from school, I would definitely rush to go turn that show on. And I remember on Saturdays they used to have the countdown, the top 10 countdown. So I would definitely tune in to see who was the number one rap song of that week. So that was definitely a great time in my life. And I just wish that we can get back to that era, man. That was a great time for music.
It was timeless, bro. It was timeless. Like people who didn't live in the '90s and grew up in the '90s, they don't understand like how iconic like the music was, the movies were, the clothes, the NBA, WWE, all that shit. Like they don't understand how iconic that 10-year period was for all of that. You can't
Yeah.
understand it unless you actually lived it and were a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that I was able to grow up during that time because I was definitely, I would say, the golden era of hip hop music. There's no other era that comes close to that era. Just the way that it influenced the generations into where we're at right now. I just feel like that was the most influential and the best era of music to me.
Yeah, I feel like without the '90s, hip hop would have never like become what it's become now. The '80s, it was looked at as more of like a fad that was gonna fade away, but by the end of the '80s, it was clear that it was here to stay. And then like in the '90s, it was just on another level. Like the '90s is like what really put hip hop on the map and just said like, yo, this shit is here for good. This shit is where it's at, and it's gonna be some hard shit to top,
Yeah,
and maybe
definitely.
you can't be topped. And this isn't to say that there isn't good music out now and good shit out now. There definitely is. There's a lot of good artists, a lot of good music out there. But that's the thing. It's just a lot harder to find than it was 30 years ago. Like you really have to like search and like dig for it and like really go out of your way to find it. And that process can be exhausting sometimes. It really can be.
Yeah, it's kind of tough because especially the radio. If you turn the radio on, they play the same four songs like every single time. I guarantee when you turn on the radio, if you go to a store, you have the radio playing, you go inside, come back. I guarantee if you turn on the radio, the same song, there's a good chance that same song is still playing. That they play the song. They just they kill songs as much music as there's out. They keep playing the same songs over and over and like force feed you until you get to the point like, damn, I like this song now, even though you hate it. So you hear it so
Yeah,
damn much that you just like it because they play it fucking 24/7.
yeah, and it's not even the fact they play the same song nonstop. A lot of the same songs they play nonstop is like a lot of like negative, toxic ass bullshit that's like gonna make people dumb or make people do shit that they shouldn't be doing. Yeah, like a lot of that radio shit you hear is like a lot of like negative and unhealthy shit. And I feel like in a way that's what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And then the artists that are dropping good conscious music or just good music in general feel they don't play it on the radio, which is good, or they don't promote it. They don't like you never know. Like artists
Joey
like
Badass.
Joey Badass, like these artists like dropping good quality music, and they don't you never hear about them unless you like you just know and you're in the circle and know what where to find this type of music. But if you don't, if you're a natural hip hop head and you don't know where to find it, like how you gonna know?
Yeah, there is some good ass music out there still. There's definitely some good shit out there that I would say I don't want to say it's better than the stuff in the 90s, but definitely damn close. But you just have to really look for it. I'm looking back now, I'm kind of bothered when they would always say hip hop is dead. Hip hop is dead, like, back in the mid 2000s. Yo, it never died. It never went anywhere. But admittedly, it is a lot harder to find now.
Yeah, I would say hip hop didn't die. I would just say hip hop has evolved, and it's kind of like the same thing. The effect, like our parents, they don't like the music that we grew up that we listened to, and now we're just getting older. We're getting to the point we don't fuck with the music from like the younger generation as much. Like some of it is cool, but people just grow up and evolve and just like different things. So I don't know, just times are different now.
Yeah, bees like that. We're the old heads now. Ain't that a bitch?
Exactly, we're the OGs now in the game. Yeah. So speaking of an OG in the game, Nas is on an incredible run. He's dropped 6 albums in the last 3 years, dropping two different series at the same time: King's Disease, Volume One, Two, and Three, and also dropping Magic One, Two, and Three. This is a crazy run because even before these last 6 albums, Nas was considered one of the top three, definitely top five hip hop artists of all time. I think he's top. He's my favorite. I don't see anybody else who has a catalog as big as him, or as long as him, or has done enough in has influenced or had an impact on the culture as much as Nas. There's only another a couple other rappers like Jay-Z and a couple other people, but there's nobody on that level who's impacted the culture as much as Nas. And just this 6 album run just helps solidify his legacy. It was already solidified, but then just after that Nasir debacle with that Kanye album, I felt like Nas was like, nah, I'm not going out like this. I'm not going out with this shitty ass Kanye album. I need to come back and leave my legacy on a good note. So I feel like that was more what this run was to make people forget about Nasir, that it ever came out and that ever was a thing. Now all you remember is the King's Disease, the Nas and Hit-Boy run, which yeah, they just dropped 6 solid albums. It's not like any of them are horrible. Like some are better than others, but Nas's bad is better than like 95% of the shit that's out right now. So I don't know. What do you think about Nas and Hit Boy's 6 year run? I'm sorry, not 6 years, 6 album run over the last 3 years, and maybe some of the highlights or some of the songs or which albums maybe stood out to you that kind of like that you felt.
I love it. I will never complain about getting a new Nas album. But I will say, out of everything that he came out with in this whole run, the three King's Diseases probably stood out the most, especially the second one. The newer ones have also been good, like the Magic 3 and all that jazz. The only thing I will say about the more recent ones, they kind of remind me more of like the Nas's Lost Tapes. They're still good, but it doesn't really like feel like a complete project like the way those other ones did, at least for me.
Yeah, I definitely get that feeling. I felt like the King's Disease series was more of like a full complete album where the songs were more deep in depth, and you could tell that he worked on them a little bit more and put them more. I would say the songs are better put together than when you compare the Magic series. It was still good. I felt like the Magic One series album was probably the best one out of all of them, and I felt like yeah, like you said, the Magic series felt like kind of like the lost tapes, kind of like things that were like ideas that were kind of like weren't complete, or just things that Nas just wanted to try out, wasn't really like his style. So he was kind of like experimenting on the Magic series, I would say. But nevertheless, it's Nas. No matter what he drops, it's going to be better than 95% of the music that comes out. So all 6 of the albums were still pretty solid. I would say my favorite would probably be King's Disease 2, followed by KD 3. Those are probably the two best projects. And I would say Magic 1 was probably my favorite out of the Magic series. And also Magic 3 is pretty solid. But overall, like I said, incredible run. Nas already solidified himself even before dropping these 6 albums. I just felt like he was on a mission to prove that the Nasir album was just a fluke. It was a crazy circumstance. They tried to record an album within a week, where you could tell there was a lot of, I don't know, that album just felt like it wasn't complete. It felt like it was a lot of rush, pieces smashed together, and it was kind of like just thrown together, and it wasn't they didn't really take their time on that album, which I understand what they were trying to do at that time. They were trying to drop an album, or Kanye was trying to drop an album being made within a week and dropping albums every single week. But that just didn't work for Nas. Nas is the type of artist that he needs time to really put together, really think through what, his music and his songs. So I felt like, yeah, he definitely want to come back with these albums to kind of like make people forget about that album altogether. And I felt like these albums, just like I said, solidified his legacy, which was already set. But you can, if you had an argument before these series dropped, there's no argument now. Like, he's definitely in the top two. Like, there's no other argument. Like, I don't know who you put over him or on that level other than Jay-Z. There's nobody else on that level, I feel like. So
Yeah, Nas has one of the best discographies probably in all of hip hop. In all honesty, for him to only have two bad albums out of all the albums he's come out with, that is really saying a lot. Only two bad albums, that is a fucking great average. And most of his albums have been either good or fucking great. And at this stage of his career, being what, 50 years old now, just turned 50 last month, for him to still be dropping, the consistent shit he's been dropping this last 3 years or so, or whatever it's been, that's a huge accomplishment and a huge fucking pat on the back for him for being able to pull this off the way he has. I definitely, if Nas wasn't my favorite rapper before this, he's definitely my favorite rapper now after this. And he was my favorite rapper before this, by the way.
yeah, you definitely can't take anything away from him with this run over the last few years. Another thing that he is what he's trying to do is also shift the culture where artists of his age are dropping music. If you look at other genres like rock, other pop, other genres, you see that these artists they'll still continue to drop music up into their 50s, 6 years old. You got Mick Jagger, U2, some other a lot of other bands that still make music. And why is it in hip hop that once you reach like 30 or 35, like you got to stop recording and putting music out? I feel like you could definitely, still put out good quality music. You may have evolved as an artist and talk about different things because your life, you've evolved, got more mature and you're at an older age. So the content is definitely different of what he raps about. But I feel like you could definitely still really, really put your art out there, release some music, and it definitely you will find some people to gravitate toward, toward the people like older age, still like that, still like that artist and still like what they stand for and their songs or whatever. So if you're still capable of still putting out music, if I'm not everybody is good enough to put out music at 50 years old, but if you're still good, like LL Cool J, there's a couple other ones that are up, getting up
KRS
there in
One.
age that you can still drop quality music. Yeah, KRS One, but not everybody is still good at that age. But if you're still good and if you're still into it, then why not drop an album and see what people say? I seen Redman spitting some ill bars online over the last few weeks. He's been going ham. Like I seen Method Man came out with an album a few months ago. So there's definitely people from our era that can still come out and drop quality music that people will still fuck with.
Yeah, definitely. Whether it's good or not, they should still do it if they really feel like it. Somebody like myself who's been rapping for 20 years myself, I don't plan on ever stopping rapping. I plan on rapping until the day I die. And I feel like for any artist, that should definitely be something that you feel deep down, whether people accept what you put out or they don't accept what you put out, you should still keep making music until you can no longer physically make music anymore. And I hope Nas continues to do that as long as he can physically be able to, because I'll always be a consumer of whatever he puts out. I'll always be willing to listen to it, whether it's good or bad. I will always listen to a Nas project anytime a Nas project drops, except for Nostradamus.
No, that album wasn't as bad as people
Yes,
say
it
it was,
was.
but
Yes, it
I don't
was.
want to get into that argument today. We'll save that for
Okay,
another
okay.
episode. But I will say that. Do you think that Nas is done from here? Do you think he takes a break? What do you think is next for Nas, and where does he kind of go from here?
Let's be real. When it comes to hip hop, nobody ever fully retires. Nobody ever. says they're going to retire and then actually stays retired. It never happens. It doesn't happen in hip hop. It doesn't happen in wrestling. The only place I could say it maybe does happen sometimes is the NBA. And even Jordan came out of retirement for 2 years.
Yeah, Brady. So all the people come back. I would say I don't think he's done. I would say he definitely is going to take a break. I feel like the Nas and Hit-Boy thing was a good run, but I do feel like it's time for them to go their separate ways. At least for a little while, maybe they could come back in a couple years and put together another project. But at least for now, I feel like we've had enough of that Nas and Hit-Boy. I feel like it would be nice to hear Nas on some different producers or with some different people. So I feel like that would be good. Give Nas a breath of fresh air. It's something new. I feel like people have been asking for that Nas and Primo album. I don't know if that's gonna happen because they did drop a song like a few months ago called Break Beats. That was okay. It was all right, and I just feel like DJ Premier he's kind of up there in age and he does make beats and songs here and there, but he's not as consistent as he doesn't like when he was in his Gangstar days in his heyday. So it's gonna I don't know if he would be able to put together an album with Nas that would be still relevant today. So that would be something to see. Hopefully they can lock in the studio and work something and craft something together. But I did see something. I saw a picture that kind of sparked my interest. I saw a picture of Nas and Havoc together a couple of days ago. So that would be interesting to hear a Nas and Havoc album because I always thought that Nas was like pretty much in another. Nas and Mobb Deep were like hand in hand back in that time. Like they were on the same tracks. And they made some of the best songs together. So having Havoc produce a whole Nas album, R.I.P. Prodigy, one of the best lyricists of all time. Shouts out to Queens. But I feel like for Nas to have an album produced by Havoc, I think that would definitely be a great thing for hip hop, definitely for Queens and for Queensbridge. And I feel like Havoc still has something left in the tank. It's just that when you lose somebody like P, it's kind of hard to drop music. But I saw that he did come out with an album with Styles P a couple years ago, which was pretty dope. I don't know if you got you got a chance to hear it,
No, I didn't get to
but
hear it
yeah,
yet.
if Nas and Havoc come together, yeah, definitely check that out. I forgot the name of it, but it came out a couple years ago. You should be able to find it on Spotify or whatnot. But yeah, if Nas and Havoc came with an album together, I think that would be dope. Who else would you think would be a good idea? What do you think would be good for Nas to do from here?
I was going to say maybe him and Drake could collaborate again.
I mean, Dr. Dre.
Yeah, like kind of like to make up with what happened with the whole Firm album and all that jazz. They could collaborate again. I would love to fucking see Nas and Dre put some shit out together. Who the fuck wouldn't buy that?
Yeah, I would like to hear that. The only thing is that Dr. Dre, he hasn't been out there like that. He comes out like once every 10 years. I don't know if he can
I
just
know.
do
But
that anymore. If he
I'm just saying, in a perfect world, like if I were to pick somebody, he would collaborate with. Dre would be one of the people on the list.
Oh yeah, definitely Dre. I know he there was rumors that he was gonna do an album with RZA and with Swiss Beats. So I feel
Ooh,
like
that'd be
Swiss Beats
great.
a little
I was gonna
bit.
mention Swiss Beats actually. I was actually gonna mention Swiss Beats.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. The only thing is that with Swiss Beats, sometimes his beats are hit or miss, and sometimes they can be overproduced. And I feel like with Nas, he needs like a simple like a simple beat. So that because I feel like Nas's lyrics overshadow whatever beat he's on. I know some people will say he had poor beat selection. I don't think that's the case because there's a lot of I could name you a bunch of beats that he's rapped on that are timeless that still withstand the test of time. So I don't think it's his beat selection. I just feel like Nas has such a strong voice and the shit that he says, the lyrics that he has, they just overtake the track no matter what beat it's on. He's just that type of lyricist. He just takes over the beat. Doesn't matter what fucking beat it is. They just as long as the beat's playing, he's gonna spit over it and he's gonna murder it. So I don't know. I just feel like it's some interesting to see where he goes from here. I don't think he's done yet. I think he has some gas left in the tank, but it's interesting to see where he goes from here. But I do feel like the Nas and Hit Boy run did run its course, and I feel like it's time for both of them to do something new.
I'm just happy Nas is in that billionaires club now. I'm happy for him in that sense because I know that divorce like really fucked him up with Khalees. So I'm glad he bounced back from that in a major way.
Yeah, definitely. Nas definitely came a long way because I know he was always quiet. He always wasn't like he didn't want to be in the spotlight like that. and but he definitely got in his business bag with crypto, with the ring, all that, all those investments that he's made. I think he invested in Lyft also, so he's making a lot of money off of his investments, and he's enjoying. You could tell that he's in a good space right now just by listening to the music and like some of the interviews that he's done. You could tell he's in a great space right now. He's enjoying life and he's just having fun, just dropping music, or, doing something that he loves to do. So I enjoy the art. I want more to keep coming our way, and I look forward to the next project that comes out.
Yeah, and I love to see that because that's a thing, especially with me as an artist, and just and for my love for hip hop in general. Real heads, real hip hop heads, they do it because they love to do it. Not because it will make them famous, not because it'll make them rich, not because they'll get a lot of girls, but because they love the culture, they love the art, they love to express themselves in that way, and that's why they keep doing it. And that's why I hope Nas continues to keep doing it.
Yeah, and I just hope it inspires another. I hope it inspires all the artists. Just get back to the art, man. Just get back to the love of making good music, man. Fuck the trends. Fuck what everybody else is doing. Just make good quality music, put it out, and see what happens, man. Stop getting with artists just to get your streams up. Let's get back in the studio together. Let's vibe out and make a good song, man. Take your time, work on your music, and put out some quality shit, man. That's all I'm asking for. I don't want this cookie cutter copy template ass music that's coming out.
That nobody's gonna remember a year from now.
Exactly. These songs they come out and 6 months from now, you like they don't hit the same. They have no replay factor. Like these songs for the 90s, it's 20, 30 years later, these songs are still can still play. They're still hot like the first day they came out.
Yeah, people go crazy over that shit. You know how many people online just post nonstop how they miss the '90s. The '90s was the best. The '90s was the best decade. The '90s had the best music. There's a reason why people feel that way. I mean, people love the '80s, people love the '70s, even the 2000s, but there was just something about the '90s. And like I said before, everybody who lived in that era and lived in that decade and remembers it knows that that time was just special, especially when it came to music.
Yeah, just the 90s just hit different. I mean, and then our final topic, segueing from the Nas and Hit-Boy to Tupac's murder case. I know it's kind of something that we kind of already knew, but it's something like kind of bringing closure to the family where Keefe D was actually arrested the other day for he's been speaking in a bunch of interviews, kind of like snitching on himself for the most part, and he finally got locked up over this. I've seen numerous documentaries and conspiracies and things of who actually did it. I kind of feel like this is kind of long overdue. I don't know why it took 27 years to get to this point. I feel like we kind of knew who were the players were and what went down, but I feel like there was a lot of corrupt cops, a lot of cover ups, and a lot of shadiness going on behind the scenes that we probably don't even know about. I felt like this should have been solved a long time ago. I'm just happy that they finally got somebody in custody, and somebody can. He's probably gonna get everything thrown at him because of this, unless he starts snitching on some other people. So we'll see how far his gang ties go, if he's gonna snitch on people or if he's gonna if he's gonna stand up and not snitch like all these people in these gangs say no snitching. So we'll see what happens, but I'm glad that finally somebody is locked up over this case. Hopefully they can get Biggie's next. That would be great to at least have some closure with his family, because at least Biggie's mom is still alive. It kind of does suck though. It's kind of bittersweet that even though they did get Keefe D, that Tupac's mom has passed away. When did she pass away? Like 5 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, 5, 6 years ago, give or take. Yeah, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So I don't understand the timing of this. Like she already passed away, so it's not like she's gonna get closure, or his family's gonna get closure from this. Like I don't know. It's just kind of weird time why they waited till now to all of a sudden
Well,
pursue this when the shit's been out for years.
well, I was actually reading about it today, and they were talking about how he did confess to police that he orchestrated the whole attack, the whole shooting and whatnot.
He did this recently, or that's something that I thought he already said that a long time ago.
This was like in 2009. Yeah, like this was in 2009. He confessed it to police, but the thing is, he confessed it to police under this kind of agreement where he would like give the police information, but in turn, they could not use that information to, incriminate him or like lock him up. So that's
Prosperity.
why, like, when he confessed to it all those years ago, nothing ever happened because it was under that agreement. But now these last few years with him like opening up a lot more, and I think like there was like a police raid of his apartment, and they like found like his memoirs, and in his memoirs he was
Yeah,
talking about it also. And in the memoirs, it basically said the only two living witnesses of Tupac getting killed that are still alive are him and Suge Knight.
yeah. And Suge Knight, I don't think is saying anything.
And he did maintain that, like in a BET interview that where he first confessed in 1998, that the shot came from the back of the car, the back seat of the car.
Yeah, so from documentaries I heard it was his nephew Orlando. I forgot his last name, but something Orlando.
His nephew was the one that got attacked by Pac and Suge Knight at the casino in Vegas right before the shooting happened. That was his nephew that got attacked.
Yeah, I remember that video that at the Mike Tyson fight where they were fighting in the lobby.
Yeah,
I remember that, and that's when it happened after. But supposedly the nephew he died in like another gang related, an unrelated gang related. I'm sorry, an unrelated gang shooting. Like he died like in 1998 or a few years later after that.
yeah,
So
98 it was 98.
yeah, he can't speak about it anymore. But his uncle was still around. He had that agreement, but then he went and still did these interviews, still talking about it and incriminating himself. So he's gonna have to, I don't understand how he still has all that stuff in his house 27 years later. I thought you would get rid of it by now, but I guess hey, I don't know. 27 years later, you still have this stuff in your house, or you have notes written about it. Like if you got away with it, I would, keep quiet and just stay in my own little box. Go, change my identity or move to another country, something. But I wouldn't be openly doing interviews and talking about it. I guess he didn't realize that that agreement that he had was only that one time. That you can't just keep talking about what happened and not get apprehended. So we'll see what happens and see if how to what the sentencing is and what happens to him, and if anybody else gets taken down from this. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, hopefully they do find Biggie's killer next and solve that case. That would definitely be a good look. But it's funny, I kind of like forgot about the whole Tupac thing, in all honesty, because it's been so long, and also his mom's dead now. But
I
it's so
know.
crazy, just out of nowhere, this shit happens. I'll never forget in the Beef documentary, they interviewed Tupac's mom for it, and she even said that like Tupac would always tell her that he didn't expect to live long, and then he was always talking about like when he would die and when he would get murdered, and he always said that like the person that would end up murdering him would be like a random stranger that he didn't even know. And lo and behold,
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy how he spoke spoken into existence. Like look at the Machiavelli album. How
shit.
crazy was that album? The timing of when that album came out and the whole meaning behind the name of Machiavelli, like that was just a creepy time and how that came. That's why people think that he faked his death because of that. Because of Machiavelli faked his death back in the day, back in whenever that happened. But yeah, it's just nuts.
And it's funny, Tupac was like the real first celebrity death that shocked me. Like the first like real celebrity death that I remember that like really, like surprised me where I said, what the fuck, this person's dead? That one was Tupac. That was the very first one for me.
Yeah, that definitely hit hard. I would say the Biggie one hurt me really bad because Biggie was my favorite artist at that time,
Yeah, I get it.
and that just killed me. Like that hurt me really bad. I remember getting a call from one of my friends calling me, telling me like, "Yo, put on MTV News. Did you hear what happened?" I'm like, "Nah, you're lying." And then I turn it on, and then all the coverage is talking about Biggie. Biggie died, and last night in Los Angeles, he got killed by a drive-by shooting. It was just sad, man. Just a sad time. But hopefully, this could at least bring some closure to both cases. Maybe they are connected. I would say that they probably are connected some way, somehow. So we'll see what comes about it and see maybe there's some closure that the families can get after all these years.
Yeah, and it's so crazy. The two of them were like that hot and like at the top of the game, that young, like in their mid 20s, and they both died in their mid 20s at that too. It's so crazy. Neither one of them lived to be
Yeah,
30. Neither one of those dudes lived to be 30 years old.
yeah. They've been dead longer than they were alive.
Yeah,
That's how crazy that is. And they're just now trying to, finding their killer. So we'll see what happens, man. We'll see. But
yeah.
that's pretty much all we got for today.
Yeah, it was fun doing this pilot episode. There'll definitely be more to come. We're just setting the tone right now, so we'll definitely have some more hip hop news, our thoughts on what the current culture is, what the past culture was, and what we would like to see going forward. So look us up on social media if you want to connect with us, talk to us about any hip hop news or anything beyond that. And for next time, for Khan, this is Conscious Kurt for our very first edition of Shifting the Culture. Take care. God bless. And don't be an asshole in real life or social media. Have a good one.
Peace.